She took everything, the cabin, the account, even the land I dreamed of for years, and married my best friend a week later. But what didn't they know? I was never out of the game. And when they finally looked back, I had already won. I sensed something was off the second I opened the cabin door. It wasn't the silence. Snow blanketed the mountains in stillness, soft and expected. It was my absence that struck first. No boots by the threshold. No trace of our photo above the hearth. The leather chair I'd spent weeks choosing had vanished. In its place sat a cheap imitation, bland, forgettable, wrong. The fireplace was cold. The walls carried a different scent, lavender and furniture polish, instead of pine and old timber. I stepped inside slowly, each movement heavy with disbelief. My breath missed in the air. The cabin should have felt familiar. It didn't. I moved to the office. The drawer that used to stick pulled open to easily. Inside sat a new file folder labeled property. The papers had been reprinted, reorganized, renamed. My name was gone, completely removed from the title, replaced by hers. Eliza Whitmore, her maiden name. Her parents' names are listed as no sign of Noah Carver anywhere. The words blurred for a moment. My fingers tightened around the pages. My pulse hammered in my ears. I stared at the paper like it might correct itself if I gave it enough time. I didn't confront her right away. I waited until morning, when the snow had eased and the roads were open. I drove down the mountain and walked into their kitchen like I belonged there. Her father sat at the table with a newspaper and a steaming cup of black coffee. Eliza stood beside him, her hair pinned up, calm like Sunday mornings. I held up the file. Her father glanced at it without blinking. "We just made a few updates," he said, as if we were discussing trash pickup or mailbox repairs. Eliza's smile was smooth and practiced. "It's still family land," she said sweetly, sweet like venom. I walked out without speaking another word. If I had stayed, I might have said something I'd regret. The drive back to Denver was a blur. 4 hours of icy roads, a heater that refused to work, and a sick ache in my stomach that wouldn't leave. I didn't sleep that night. I just stared at the ceiling until dawn broke. When the sun rose, I opened the fireproof safe at the foot of my closet. Inside sat the original deed, my signature, my notary, my investment, tucked in next to a flash drive with backup scans, signed, dated, stamped. Real. I knew who to send it to, someone they'd never expect. But that came later, 3 years earlier. The cabin had been nothing but a broken shell of forgotten timber on neglected land. I had found it while hiking alone, a rotted sign half buried in snow. The windows were shattered, the roof sagged, but I saw what it could become. I saw warmth and peace, quiet and restoration. I saw home. Eliza saw something else. She saw what it might mean for us. We drove up the following weekend with coffee and thermoses and our dog riding in the back. We camped inside on sleeping bags. While snow drifted through cracks in the walls, she laughed that night when we spilled soup on the floor, wrapped in blankets and tangled limbs. She called it our sanctuary. Weekends became sacred. We worked with our hands side by side, ripping out old nails, installing new wiring, hanging drywall, painting ceilings. Her playlist filled the silence while I carried lumber. Her hair was always messy, her cheeks always flushed from the cold. She looked alive up there. We both did. Her parents visited once during the first year. They stood on the porch like tourists, unimpressed. Her father had called it too remote and a money pit. Her mother asked where the nearest boutique hotel was. Lisa just rolled her eyes. "They'll never get it," she said, "but we do." By the second year, the cabin had changed. It stood tall and strong, like it had always been there. Pine walls, restored beams, new plumbing, working, heat. We hosted dinners, toasted wine beside the fire. She told me it was the most peace she had ever felt. She said a lot of things. The change came slowly, almost too slow to notice. At first, she missed a few weekends. "Work," she said. "Overtime, deadlines, conferences." Then came the girls' nights, spa weekends, the occasional phone call that went unanswered. But I didn't question her. I trusted her, until I did in single quotes T. One night, I noticed a charge on our joint card, a hardware store, one I didn't recognize. A second charge came a week later, paint, lumber, locks. I hadn't bought any of those. I called her, casually asked if she'd done any repairs. "You said it needed updating," she answered breezily. I hadn't said that. Then came the message. She had left her phone on the dining table. It lit up as I passed. I didn't mean to look, but the preview was right there. A text from her father. "Everything's in motion. He won't notice." She didn't see me read it. I didn't ask her about it. I didn't yell. I kissed her forehead that night and told her to get some sleep. After that, I started sleeping in the office. She thought I was angry, but I wasn't. I was focused. Pain doesn't dull you. It sharpens you. I hired someone. Quiet, efficient. He delivered what I needed. Photos, surveillance, evidence. Her parents are unloading furniture at the cabin, swapping out the signs, ripping out fixtures I had installed, changing the locks. She was with them, smiling, signing papers at the county clerk's office. I followed the digital trail, filing records, time-stamped transfers, name edits. They weren't just taking the cabin. They were erasing me from their existence, quietly, permanently. But history leaves fingerprints, especially when it's notarized, especially when you're careful. I was methodical. I labeled every file, backed up every scan, stored paper copies in 3 different places. The original deed still carried my signature. The state knew it. So did the bank. So did the notary. They thought I was sentimental. They forgot I was trained in restoration. I deal in timelines, I live in records. I waited. The tip I sent was anonymous, just enough to flag a possible irregularity. A land audit was initiated. Standard, routine, just paperwork. But the discrepancies were obvious. Wrong dates, inconsistent transfers, missing authorizations, forged trustee forms. That's when I reached out to her aunt, her father's sister, a retired real estate lawyer with a reputation for tactics and a decades-long feud with her brother. She responded within the hour. She went nuclear, filed a formal complaint, demanded an investigation. Her signature alone stopped the property's legal flow. The county froze all actions pending review. I didn't tell Eliza, not yet. Instead, I reserved a room at our favorite steakhouse, a quiet private space with linen napkins and too much wine. I wore the same navy suit I'd worn when we bought the cabin. Petty maybe, but it felt right. They arrived as a trio. Her parents were first, smug and steady. Eliza walked in 10 minutes later, hair curled, lips red, dramatic as ever. I stood and greeted them. We sat. I placed a folder on the table. My name, I said calmly, never left the deed. Her father reached for the folder. I didn't let go. You forged documents, filed under a false trust, backdated signatures, but public records don't lie, and neither does the lawyer I sent them to. He stiffened. Eliza blinked. Her mother's mouth opened, but she said nothing. I've filed a lawsuit. I continued. Fraud, conspiracy, forgery. You'll burn through your pensions and legal fees before this reaches trial. I stood before they could respond, left enough cash for the dinner, walked out into the night, and never looked back. I didn't sleep that night either, but for a different reason. For the first time in months, I felt peace. The courthouse was built of old stone and cold windows. Mornings there felt gray, even when the sun was out. I sat in the back row of the small Claims hearing room, arms crossed, watching the scene unfold like an observer to someone else's storm. Eliza sat at the plaintiff's table, her posture stiff, lips tight. Her parents were on either side, flanked by their high-priced lawyer, who looked 10 years too young to be charging the rates he did. Across from them sat her aunt, Margaret Whitmore, the family's legal ghost turned avenger. Her reading glasses hung low on her nose. Every time she opened her file, the sound sliced through the silence like a warning shot. The judge looked bored but alert, experienced, the kind who had seen hundreds of property disputes and knew when someone was bluffing. The first words spoken were Margaret's. Your Honor, I've submitted Exhibit C, a notarized deed from 2017 listing Noah Carver as the sole owner of the property in question. I've also submitted evidence that subsequent filings were altered, digitally edited, and submitted under a false trust with no legal standing. Eliza's father objected. His voice cracked the first time. Margaret leaned back, calm, and pointed to the county records on the projector. Dates don't lie, she said. These changes happened in silence, without Carver's consent. His original signature was replaced. That is forgery. The room tensed. I didn't look at Eliza. She hadn't looked at me since the hearing began. Not once. She just stared at her hands, folded too neatly in front of her, like she was holding something broken. The hearing was procedural, not dramatic. No shouting, no tears. Just paper and silence and timelines that couldn't be undone. Still, I saw cracks form in their defense. The judge's eyes narrowed as inconsistencies emerged. The audit's findings were damning. They had tried to bury me, but they'd forgotten that I kept records like oxygen. That night, I didn't go home. I stayed in a small hotel 2 blocks from the courthouse. The walls were thin, and the heater groaned, but I needed the distance. I couldn't step back into the space I used to share with her. Not yet. Around midnight, my phone buzzed. Elisa. Her message was short. Can we talk? I stared at the screen. I didn't answer right away, but curiosity still had hooks in me. I replied with one word. Where? She picked a neutral place. A coffee shop near the river. Quiet and half-lit. The kind where no one looks at you too long. I arrived first. She walked in 5 minutes later, wrapped in a coat I bought her years ago. That annoyed me more than I wanted it to. She didn't order anything. Just sat across from me and pulled her gloves off slowly, like buying time. I didn't want it to happen like this, she said. I said nothing. She looked thinner, shadows under her eyes. Her nail polish chipped. My father pushed it. She continued. He said it was easier. If the land were under the Whitmore Trust, we could secure long-term access, protect it from taxes. He made it sound logical. And you didn't think to tell me. I thought I'd tell you after you erased me from my investment. She winced. That one landed. Good. I know I was wrong. I know we were wrong. We? I raised an eyebrow. She looked away. I let it happen. I didn't stop him. That's the truth. At first it felt like nothing, just paperwork. But then it kept going. He wanted control. He always does. Did you? She looked back at me. This time, her eyes didn't flinch. I didn't want to lose you. Too late for that. I stood. She didn't stop me, but something in her expression lingered. Guilt, maybe even pain. I hated that part of me still cared. Over the next few weeks, the case spiraled into a deeper investigation. Margaret filed new motions, requested asset records, and subpoenaed phone logs. I provided everything: emails, time-stamped GPS photos, my contractor's testimony, every nail and screw I'd bought. I wasn't just the legal owner, I was the builder. The heart behind every wall. Elisa withdrew from the legal fight quietly. Her parents fought harder, more desperate. Margaret dismantled them piece by piece, one court session at a time. Then came the deposition. Margaret had warned me, don't react. Let them implode. I took a seat behind her and watched as Elisa's father was asked about the forged trust. Whose idea was it? The prosecutor asked. He hesitated. Too long. Joint, he said. Family decision. Was Noah Carver involved in that decision? No. Did he consent to any property transfer? He didn't answer. The silence said enough. Next came the receipts. Photos, timestamps. The emails Eliza never knew I recovered. The one from her father to the county clerk. The forged initials, the altered PDF. The judge called it what it was. Calculated. Attempt to dispossess the legal owner. The property was restored to me in full. The cabin, the land, the rights. The damages were still pending. But the foundation was clear. I had one, but it didn't feel like a victory. After the ruling, I stepped outside. The winter air bit into my lungs. The courthouse loomed behind me like a tombstone. I had my home back. But the person I built it for was gone. I drove north, toward the mountains, toward the cabin. The gate was frozen. I pried it open with gloved hands. Snow covered the path, untouched by them, untouched by me. The cabin stood as it always had, quiet, waiting. I unlocked the front door. The inside smelled like wood and silence. The tarp still covered the leather chair. I pulled it off slowly and sat down, staring at the cold fireplace. It was mine again, but it felt different. I spent the night there, woke to snow tapping the windows like a slow drum. Made coffee with the old percolator, walked the halls alone. Each room carried ghosts, laughter in the walls, whispers in the corners. And then I found something I hadn't noticed before. In the office, tucked behind a filing cabinet, lay a small velvet pouch. Inside was a bracelet, gold thin, the one I gave Eliza on our 5th anniversary. She must have dropped it during one of the staged visits. I stared at it for a long time. That evening, my phone rang again. Margaret, double quotes. They offered to settle, she said, a quiet payout to avoid further litigation. I'm not interested in their money, I said. I didn't think you were, but I thought you should know. Thank you, Margaret, for everything. You did most of it yourself. I just cleaned the mess. We hung up. I stood by the window watching the sunset bleed over the peaks. Then came the knock, 3 soft taps on the cabin door. I opened it slowly. Eliza stood on the porch, bundled in a scarf, holding a paper bag and 2 thermoses. I thought maybe we could talk just once. I didn't answer, just stepped aside. She walked in, looked around like it hurt. I brought chili, she said. I nodded. We sat in silence, eating, not speaking. After a long time, she whispered, I'm sorry. I said nothing. I didn't have to. She reached into her coat and pulled out the bracelet, was going to return it. I placed the one I'd found beside hers. You dropped it. Our hands touched briefly. Neither of us moved. I miss who we were, she said. I miss who you used to be. We didn't cry. We didn't shout. Just sat there in the fading light, the fire crackling low, the snow falling outside. Some things break too quietly to notice at first, but when they do, the silence is deafening. The snow kept falling long after Eliza left. She hadn't stayed the night. After we ate in silence, she stood quietly, thanked me for letting her in, and walked into the cold without asking for anything more. No plea, no promises, just silence. It was harder than I expected. For a week after, I tried to work. Drafted blueprints, took client calls, opened design files, and stared at floor plans I no longer cared about. The cabin lingered in my mind like a bruise that wouldn't fade. I kept thinking about her eyes, not when she lied, not when she broke me, but when she apologized, and meant it. Then came the envelope. Plain, white, no return address, handwritten. Was left at my office desk sometime between Friday and Monday. Inside were 3 things. A printed photo of Eliza at the county clerk's office, a memo detailing an internal trust transfer 2 years prior, and a birth certificate. My breath caught when I saw the last one, the mother's name, Eliza Whitmore. Carver. The father's line, blank. The child's name, Nathaniel Carver. Born 1 year and 3 months after the weekend she stopped coming to the cabin. Born in a small town 30 miles from where her parents had been vacationing. I felt the floor shift beneath me. I sat in my office, alone, the late afternoon light blinding through the windows. My hands trembled. I reread every word, every line. My mind raced backward through every argument, every withdrawal, every cold night in our bed. She had been hiding this. Hiding him. The betrayal hit me differently now, not as anger, as something deeper. Abandonment. I drove for 2 hours before I realized where I was headed. The town is on the birth certificate. I stopped at the municipal office, posed as a researcher, updating family genealogy. The clerk didn't blink. She printed out a confirmation of birth records. Then she said something strange. He's a sweet kid. His mother brings him by sometimes to play in the garden outside. His mother, Eliza, she volunteers on weekends. I walked back to my car, sat there for what felt like forever. Why hide him? Why keep me out? That night, I sent a message. I know about Nathaniel. Her reply came in under 2 minutes. Can we talk? We met at a park bench in the city. Her hair was tied up, no makeup. Just tired eyes and hands that wouldn't stop fidgeting. You found him? No. I found everything you didn't say. She looked away. Her voice cracked when she answered. I got pregnant during that fall, right after you started staying late at work. Right after, the cabin started feeling more like yours than ours. I didn't plan it. I didn't even know how to tell you. You didn't tell me because you were erasing me. You had already started. No, I didn't tell you because I thought you'd see it as a trap, as another reason to stay when you were already drifting. I shook my head. You rewrote history. You took my child and put your name only. I thought you didn't want us anymore. You were so cold. You never yelled, never fought, just disappeared into paperwork. I thought you were leaving. I tried to protect what I could, by forging documents, by cutting me out of everything we built. I panicked. My parents told me they could help, that we could keep the cabin, the child, and the stability. I gave in. Your parents wanted my name gone. From the land, from your life, from our son. She didn't deny it. I made mistakes, she whispered, but I didn't erase you from him. He knows about you. I just didn't know how to bring you back. A long silence passed between us. I want to meet him, I said. She nodded slowly. I figured you'd say that. She pulled a small envelope from her coat and handed it to me. Inside were drawings, crayon sketches of a cabin, a mountain, a man, and a boy holding hands. On the bottom of one page, in shaky handwriting, was a name. Dad. I felt something fracture in my chest. The next week was a blur of meetings with Margaret. New filings, custody, mediation. I didn't want revenge, not anymore. I wanted time, with him, with the truth. Elisa didn't fight. She stepped back from the battle completely. Her parents tried to claw back control, but Margaret filed restraining orders and asset blocks. They weren't just losing the cabin. They were losing everything. Retirement homes, investments, and even their second vehicle. It turned out they'd used my cabin to back a private loan. Illegal without full ownership. Fraud again. Margaret buried them, but I didn't celebrate. I just waited for the day I would finally see him. It came on a Saturday. I arrived at the park Eliza suggested, a modest playground tucked into a grove of trees. She was already there, sitting on a bench watching him on the slide. He had dark hair, wide eyes, a cautious smile. When he saw me, he paused. Eliza walked him over. Nathaniel, this is Noah. He's a friend, someone special I want you to meet. He looked up at me. I crouched slowly, unsure of what to say, but he spoke first. Are you my dad? My breath hitched. Yes, I whispered. He nodded like that made sense, like he'd known all along. I drew the cabin. Did you see it? I did. You're a good artist. Can we go there? One day soon? I promise. He smiled, looked at Eliza. Her eyes were wet. She mouthed a single word. Thank you. We sat there for hours, talking, laughing, letting time catch up to us. I learned he loved maps, hot chocolate, and dinosaurs. He didn't like bees. Or peas. When the sun dipped below the trees, Eliza said, it was time to go. Nathaniel hugged me once, tightly. I'll see you soon, right? Count on it. As they walked away, I stayed on the bench. The world felt heavy and new, like I was just waking up. 3 months later, the court finalized our shared custody. Nathaniel would visit the cabin for the summers and holidays. Eliza and I would co-parent, not as enemies, not as lovers, but something in between, something hard to name but necessary to hold. One afternoon, while he was napping in the leather chair, I found myself standing in front of the fireplace, holding the 2 bracelets, one from the past, one from the end. I placed them both in a carved box and sealed it. Some legacies aren't built from fire or stone. They're made of memory and silence, and what we choose to protect when everything else has been taken. The cabin remains. So do I. And now, when people ask who owns it, I smile and answer honestly. It's still family land. Only now. Family means something different, something earned, something true.